Hello, my name is Steve Blake, and I've been doing some research to see if we have some control over the growth of lymphoma. I'm looking principally at dietary methods, and I'm using only peer-reviewed research reported in good journals. I hope this is helpful. First of all, I looked at a study in the Mayo Clinic. They looked at over 1,600 people, and they compared antioxidants from food and the risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, 90% of lymphoma is non-Hodgkin lymphoma, also known as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I'm going to focus on that. Today, when I talk about lymphoma, I'm going to be referring to the non-Hodgkin's type, because it's hard to say Hodgkin's for one reason. So they looked at 1,600 people, and they looked at the food and the antioxidants, and they found that if you want to cut your risk of growth of lymphoma in half, more vegetables and vitamin E cut the risk in half in this study. Also, beta carotene and two other related carotenoids, lutein and zeaxanthin, cut risk by 40%. That's a lot of risk cutting. Now, it's interesting that zinc reduced risk 46%. It is our immune system that kills off leukemia cells, and we need that to be working, and zinc is important for our immune system. Zinc is also a critical factor as an antioxidant in the enzyme superoxide dismutase. Chromium, just getting some chromium, which isn't as easy to get as you might think, 32% less risk. And this is from the International Journal of Cancer in 2012. By the way, if you want more information on any of these topics, you can just type the name of the journal article in Google Scholar and read at least the abstract and often the entire study. Now, people get fatigued with lymphoma. This study is hot off the presses, 2022, in current developments in nutrition. Cancer-related fatigue in lymphoma survivors was significantly reduced with more whole grains, vegetables, fruit, and omega-3 plants like flaxseed meal or walnuts. Some foods have been found to reduce the risk of lymphoma. Different studies have different risk estimates, and different populations eat different amounts. For instance, in one study, fruit reduced the risk of lymphoma 15%, in another 49%. In some populations, people just don't eat enough fruit, any of them, to make a big difference, but we can. Vegetables, one study was 11% reduction, another 42% reduction, another 51% reduction. Well, the thing is, there are no studies showing that extra vegetables are giving you increased risk, just reduced. Now, cruciferous vegetables, I'll talk about very soon again, they reduce risk 16 to 30%. And green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables are like kale, collards, broccoli, and in that family, cabbage. Green leafy vegetables reduce risk 6 to 40%. And fruit and vegetables combined in this study, 21%. This is a 2017 study in leukemia and lymphoma. Now, this cruciferous family is wonderful, includes kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and broccoli. It may reduce the growth of lymphoma. How does it do this? These plants have something called glucosinolates in them, and they have an enzyme called myrosinase. When you chop it up, the myrosinase converts the glucosinolates into isothiocyanates, another big word, and sulforaphane is the chief one. Now, another way to get this is to eat broccoli sprout concentrate, which comes in little pills, but it's really much more fun to eat these foods, and they have a lot of other good things in them too. The sulforaphane can arrest cancer cell growth. That sounds good. And encourage cell death in lymphoma cells. That sounds even better. This is from the Epidemiology Biomarkers Preview in 2007. There are many things in whole plant foods that can reduce the growth of lymphoma. In this study in Cancer Causes Control Journal, more fiber and beta cryptoxanthin, another carotenoid, reduce risk by 40%. These are found in whole plant foods, but are often processed out in junk food and not found at all in meat products or any other animal products. Now, magnesium and potassium are found in abundance in whole plant foods, but hard to get other places. 60% reduction in risk and growth for magnesium, and 50% with potassium. Vitamin E did reduce risk in this study by 20%, but I looked and no one got more than 13 milligrams of vitamin E daily, and our bare minimum is 15, and much more would be better. They did notice one thing that increased growth, and that's the vitamin A found in animal fat. It's called preformed vitamin A, or retinol. Increased risk by 70%, quite a high number. Polyunsaturated fatty acids, especially linoleic acid, reduce risk by 40%. They reduce risk of the getting lymphoma and the growth of lymphoma. When you think about it, they're really the same thing. The lymphoma has to be initiated by something that's going to damage the DNA, and then it has to grow until it's big enough to get noticed and diagnosed. After it's noticed and diagnosed, it can grow more. That's the purpose of my talk today, in ways that we can get it to grow less. 70% less growth in women who got this polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's an Italian study of 190 cases. In this study, also, vitamin D reduced risk by 40% and 60% in women. Organic food may be more important than you think. The French Nutrinet Santé prospective cohort study of over 68,000 people. This is a very important study that I've read other results from. They reported an 86% reduction in the risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma with consumption of organic food. This is reported in 2018 and in the very prestigious journal, JAMA Internal Medicine. That's a journal of the American Medical Association. Why is this? Certain pesticides increase the risk of lymphoma. You may have followed the trials in court where the chief constituent of the Roundup, which is glyphosate, was found to be responsible for cases of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, this is a WHO group, World Health Organization group, classified the pesticides glyphosate, found in GMO food and many other foods that are not organic, malathion and diazinon. These are insecticides used on food, and they are organophosphates. Probably carcinogenic in human. When IARC says they're probably carcinogenic, what they really mean is they are almost certainly carcinogenic. And I think it'd be good to stay away from them. All three of these pesticides were found to increase the risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. With organic food becoming cheaper and more available, it is a good idea to reduce the growth of lymphoma to avoid these things. Now, some foods not only reduce the risk, but some increase the risk. With people who ate more meat rather than less meat, had an 87% increase in the risk of lymphoma and growth of lymphoma. Fresh vegetables, on the other hand, 48% less risk. Fruit, 35% less risk. Again, in this study, I showed you some other studies where it varied near these figures. Obesity, unfortunately, does increase the risk, so let's all try to stay away from gaining too much weight, always hard. Dairy products. It was interesting to read this in the journal Nutrients. This was a meta-analysis of dairy consumption, which means they looked at all the previous studies on it and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Each cup of dairy per day, and they gave a 200-gram estimate for a cup. Cups can vary in weight a little bit, but that's close. 42% increased risk per cup of dairy daily. Now, some people certainly eat more than 1 cup of dairy daily. 31% increased risk with more butter. Butter's concentrated, however, people don't eat so very much butter as they would other things. Now, ice cream was kind of a shocker. I have this gorgeous picture of ice cream on the slide, and yet there's a 57% increased risk with more ice cream. Basically, each of the dairy products increase risk of lymphoma. And part of this could be because of the bioaccumulated lipophilic or fat-loving pesticides that bioaccumulate in the dairy products, in the fat. And they've been found before to cause cancer problems. How could dairy products increase the growth of lymphoma? There are ways that dairy products can do this. The cancer-causing organochlorines such as dioxin, lindane, chlordane, heptachlor, it's quite a long list of organochlorine pesticides that are found in dairy products. And also PCBs, which are polychlorinated biphenyls, and the more modern PCBE, polychlorinated biphenyl ethers. These are all accumulated in the fat, in dairy fat. Now, also dairy fat may contain immunotoxins that can alter normal B cell responses. And it is the B cells that are affected along with other cells in lymphoma. There are many good alternatives to dairy products out these days, and they're getting better and better. Meat and poultry may increase the growth of lymphoma. The European Prospective Investigation into Cancer Nutrition, or EPIC as it's known, very large study, been going on over many long years, showed the risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was 32% increase with more red meat, 17% increase with processed meat. That's interesting because usually processed meat is worse, right, than red meat. In this case, it increased it less. And 56% increase was 1/3 ounce of chicken per day. Now, 1/3 of an ounce is not much of a serving. And if a serving is 3 ounces, then it's going to increase your risk dramatically. And so it's reported in the International Journal of Cancer. Another study, and this one is a Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health in 2019, the UK Biobank study, another large study, and in England, they're lucky because they have the National Health Service where they can keep track of 23,117 people for 6 years. Each additional ounce per day of poultry increased the risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma 26%. So a 3-ounce serving could increase the risk of getting and growing lymphoma 78%. Certainly some good alternatives out there for chicken. Saturated fats are found mostly in animal products and coconut fat. They can activate inflammation, and when you eat them, they can trigger this. Saturated fats trigger the toll-like receptor 4, then that triggers a nuclear factor kappa B, and that generates more cytokines, such as interleukin 6, abbreviated here, and cyclooxygenase 2, also abbreviated here. Excess saturated fats, that's anything over 12 grams a day, can increase lymphoma T cells. Now, omega-3 fats from fish can inhibit inflammatory arachidonic acid and reduce inflammatory T cells. Fish may reduce the risk of lymphoma, but it's a little bit inconclusive. The omega-3s in the fish, the EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, and the DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, do seem to reduce risk. However, the level of organochlorine pesticides and PCBs that fish is almost universally polluted with these days, whether it's farmed or wild, are associated with lymphoma and may negate the protective effect of fish consumption. This is also reported in 2007 in Cancer Epidemiology Biomarkers Preview. Soda was associated with a higher risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. 1 serving or more per day raised the risk 34%. Oddly though, diet soda raised the risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma 31%, but only in men. Does that mean it's okay for women to drink it? Well, I don't know, maybe, according to this study anyway, in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Well, that's what I have for you today to help you understand how what we eat can impact our risk of lymphoma and growth of lymphoma. And I certainly hope that this is helpful. Thank you very much.